It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the USA Olympian Alex Young, who is a hammer thrower for the men's. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Brandon.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to go into professional track and field throwing hammers?
So that one's kind of a very interesting question. And then I know kind of how it started was it seemed like the hammer found me. And when I say that, it was, I threw shot put and discus in high school. And my coach actually got us in contact with a good friend of his in the Nashville area who had a AAU track club called the Still Throwers. And so this was in between my junior and senior year. We met him. His name's Jim Brown. And he had a son who was really good at the hammer already. And he was actually a hammer thrower at Marshall University a long time ago. So he loved the hammer and he wanted to teach everyone he possibly could. So we actually had an opportunity to kind of learn how to throw it later on in my high school career. And when I actually was able to start throwing it the summer before I left for college, I actually was fairly decent at it compared to the rest of the events. And so that's honestly how I fell into hammer throw. And so that's just kind of the beginning. But I guess my freshman year is when I really learned how to throw the hammer with Coach Andy Fryman at Gardner Webb. And when I trained with him for a year, I actually made my first Team USA team, the under 19 team. And making that team was kind of the first time I was like, man, this would be cool to do, as a professional, right? Because that year I was learning everything about the hammer and studying the event. And then, like, I would say the instance where I really was like, all right, I think I can be a professional at this was in 2016 when I made the Olympic trials as a true senior in college. And I was ranked in the top 5 in the US at the time. And that was when I realized, like, I was like, yeah, I think I can do this long term. And that was with the help of my third collegiate coach at the time, coaching me, Nick Farr. And so that's kind of how I really jump started, and it's taken off ever since.
That's pretty impressive. What was your career like at Southeastern Louisiana?
No, yeah. So my time at Southeastern Louisiana was great. Like I said, the school I went to at first was Gardner Webb University. I was there for 2 years, and I transferred to Southeastern Louisiana literally with 2 weeks left before school started. And the reason being, and then this is going to tie into the reason why I was so great for my career and why I loved it so much was, I took a visit literally two weeks before the school started, and I met the head coach, and the head coach was the nicest dude I've ever met. And that's Coach Sean Brady. And I could tell that he really cared about every athlete that walked through his door and every student athlete that he had on campus. And I knew he cared about us greatly. And he didn't only care about what we did on the field of play, but also, how we did in the classroom and just as basically citizens in society. And moving forward. So I knew that he had our best interest in mind. And then, I got introduced to the throws coach at the time, Lucas McKay. And I knew a little bit about him already just because he was a prominent hammer thrower in the U.S. for a couple of years himself as a professional. And so that was one of the reasons why I was already interested. And so that relationship was really helpful. Not only because, Lucas was a guy who is definitely going to help you get the things that you needed as an athlete, which was very nice. And he was very helpful in that regard. And on top of that, not only was he able to do that, but he was able to get me in contact with the department head for kinesiology. And that's what I ended up getting my degree in. And so it was nice that they were able to have all these connections and set us up. And when I met the department head, Dr. Hebert, he actually, he introduced me to Lucas McKay introduced me to the department head, and we were able to talk shop about, my credits when I was transferring. And so that was really nice, only because, transferring is kind of a messy business when it comes to maintaining the same degree pattern that you were going to take. And so originally, a lot of universities will accept some credits and not others. And so it was great having to kind of sit down and be like, yeah, we should be able to, you've taken a lot of courses. Like I was on the path to graduate in 3 years rather than 4. But I lost some of my credits, but we were able to get a lot of them, majority of them back. So I was still able to graduate on a normal timetable and keep my same degree path, which was great. So I met him. I met the sports psychologist on campus, Dr. Hollander, who is still a great mentor to me and still helps work with me today. And so, just those small interactions is something that made me love Southeastern already. And not just that, but, it even spanned beyond just the small time we had and on campus, right? Like it even expanded to the community. So I actually he was a school chaplain, which I didn't know at the time, but he actually worked at the local church not too far away. I met him, and I met one of the football players at the time, Brian Bennett. And so, I met a lot of amazing people on this short trip. And it was, it was situations, it was parts of my life and things that I really cared about most, So I cared about my education, I cared about athletics, and I cared about my faith. And for all of them to really go out of their way to set all of that up so I could actually meet some of these people was amazing. And so that was just kind of foreshadowing the rest, the last couple of years that I had at Southeastern. And that's what made my career there worthwhile. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved it. It was the community. I had all the facilities and resources that I need to really get everything done.
What were some of your accomplishments in college, and what did it feel like to put on those jerseys for the first time?
It was. I mean, I guess it's the same. It's like putting on, I wouldn't say any other shirt because it does mean something more than that. But I guess in the sense of when I'm not a competitor, being able to represent Southeastern was always good. I always, it's a mid-major school down in Louisiana, so you have you have this program that's able to do really well across the board in a bunch of events. Like one year we finished top 12, we finished top 25 a couple times, indoor and outdoor. So like we had a team with a lot of good people. And so coming from a school that most people don't really know about, they can't really say it correctly, which cracks me up every time. And then, you have these Power Fives, especially LSU right down the road. I met some really great people down there from LSU. So nothing against LSU, but yeah, it's going from a mid-major, competing for a mid-major, and you're going against these Power Fives. And just being able to have the opportunity to go to represent a small school and not only just represent, but also do really well. And the thing was, wearing that jersey was showing people you don't have to go to a Power Five to be really good. I think there was a statistic I saw actually for the Olympic team, and I think majority of the track and field athletes that actually made the team came from mid-major schools or small schools. So it was always that sense of, I always had a chip on my shoulder. I always felt like I had been doubted. So I was just like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna show you why you should have picked me up from the beginning. And that was a direct shot towards the Power Fives. And so, yeah, again, it was just really having that jersey on was just, hey, it doesn't matter what jersey I got on, I'm going to go kick your butt regardless. And I'm going to let people know, again, it doesn't matter where you go, but it's what you do while you're there.
What did it feel like in 2016 when you won the championship for the first time in the weight throwing?
Yeah, so the national championship in the 2016, that one was really special because that was the first year for my current coach now, Amin Nickfar at Southeastern. And so it's kind of funny because that was a big year of transition. So the Lucas McKay, the first coach at Southeastern, had left. And I came back the following year, and I didn't really have a coach for the first month. And then this guy, Amin, he's a two-time Olympian. He threw the shot put in Iran. And so he shows up, and we were talking, and I was a little worried because he wasn't a hammer throw coach at first, hammer and weight coach. So I was a little worried. And so I was like, hey, I don't know how good this guy's going to be. The only thing that really held weight in my mind at the time was that he was a two-time Olympian. And with being a two-time Olympian, most likely he's been around throwing for a long time. And so he has resources. And plus he was still young, so he was still actively researching and figuring out ways to get better. And so that was kind of really how that fall went. It was more of like a trial period to see if I was like, if it's odd to say, like, if he was worthy enough to, like, handle the talent, I guess, if that makes any sense. I don't want to rag on him because he's definitely a great coach. That's why I'm with him still. But but yeah, that fall, it was just kind of building trust, and it took a while to actually build trust with him. And then we started seeing, he had me training very different from previous coaches. I guess I had two coaches before him in college. And so, it was my final hurrah, as you will. And so I wanted to make sure that I went out and did the best I could. And so, he respected that, and he rose up to the challenge. And I mean, he ended up creating this awesome different throw. And he's one of those dudes that at first, he didn't think I could throw as far as I could at that time, and I kept proving him wrong, right? So it was very interesting to kind of look back and think about that. But it was so fascinating to work that process with him, with this new training and the different type of feeling that you got with the implements. And so, yeah, winning that national championship was kind of all of that backstory into that throw, only because there was one guy, his name was Chuck, and he's a professional shot putter now for Nigeria, actually. But everybody was saying, oh, he's gonna win, like that's the guy. And I mean, if you looked at his stats, he was beating everybody out by at least 2 meters in his throw. And from the year before, it was 3 meters. So he's throwing just really far. Weight throw is definitely one of his things. And so everybody was like, yeah, man, this guy's going to win for sure. And so I was really worried about it. And, there was a point I threw really far and the throw looked awful, like maybe a couple weeks before the meet. And I was like, Coach, we can beat Chuck, and I think once I said, when I declared that I was going to beat Chuck at practice, the mentality was, we're going to go beat Chuck. And, showed up at the meet and executed me and my coach's plan that we had worked on weeks prior, and just managed to put one out there around 6. Most people know that typically my last rounds are usually my best round throws. I don't know, that's just a God-given thing, I guess, but it seems like God gives me a little extra in round 6, and I end up putting it together. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And it was a great feeling, to bring home that national championship, just because of all the hard work, all the transition, and having people around believing in me was something that was so incredible about that one.
What was it like in 2016 when you went to the Olympic trials?
It was awesome, man. It was I've gotten this question so many times, but it was a great experience. I went into 2016. Like I said, I was top. I was like pretty high up in the U.S. ranked, and I was really excited to pretty much just throw and get after it. I was young, so obviously you're extremely excited. I would say I was immature in throwing at the time, solely because hammer is a very technical event, and so I'm very anxious trying to figure out what else can I do to get the ball to go farther, instead of just focusing on what I need to do, and so that's what made it a little difficult. It was the biggest meet of my life at that time, and so there's learning blocks. I tell people all the time, there's 2 skill sets that you have. You have a skill set for practice, and then you have a skill set for throwing. They're both equally important, but very different at the same time. And so no matter if you try to practice how you compete, there's still skills, there's still tangible and concrete skills that are needed to be learned while you're competing. And so I didn't have some of the skills then that I have now. And so there was definitely a lot of nerves, and I didn't really know how to control those as much, especially going into a meet that's bigger than what I've ever gone to. And so, you're always kind of refining your skills. And so that's kind of how the 2016 went, but it was still fun. I mean, it was exciting. I was a little frustrated because there was, I missed out on the hammer final by one spot. I was the first man out. And so, and I know I had a chance to make it. And so that was a little frustrating, but, it happens and you just kind of grow from it. And, I told myself I'm never going to let that happen again. So,
How was it like preparing for the competition the day before and the weeks before you went out to do the hammer throwing?
yeah. So, really the weeks leading up, I feel like I'm very different compared to some people. It's the great thing about track is everybody's individualized. So the weeks leading into competition, I mean, it's in my mind, but it's not. I try not to really think about competing. I really just try to focus on what I can in the circle and what I can change technically. And then that's just kind of how it rides out for a couple weeks out. The week of is a little bit different, but more of the same. I'm just trying to focus on what I can fix on that day, take it one throw at a time, one practice at a time, one day at a time. And then I don't really get ready, I would say, until it's actually meet day and I walk into the venue or wherever I'm going. And I know that sounds weird because some people are like, yeah, but you should practice how you're going to compete. But for me, if I think about that, I'm one of those people that get like really aroused for competition. So you get really excited. And so if I hold that same energy for weeks on end, or even just a week, I get tired, right? My body gets wore out from all the good. It's good stress, but I get wore out from the stress. So like I said, the best way for me to do it is I don't think about it until I'm in it, and that I think that's a way of self-preservation, as you will, and honestly gets me the max result that I can get. So that's how I do it. And sometimes in bigger competitions, there are times where my body is real amped up to ready to compete, no matter if I'm trying to tell myself, all right, this is just practice. My body will get amped up regardless. And so there'll be times where the timing of the hammer is off a little bit. And so then I'll get frustrated. But usually that's a good sign for me and my coach. It doesn't really mean anything. And so when the timing's off a little bit or whatever, that just means when I'm at the meet, the timing syncs up and then I throw really well, right? So that's something that I've also had to learn over time because it used to not be like that. So, but yeah, that's kind of the lead up. And then the day of competition, like I said, I don't really get amped up until I start my warm up, which is about in 45 minutes before we actually compete. So I do that, I have my music going, I'm sitting there, getting ready. And then when we step up for warm ups, same thing. I'm just sitting there thinking about the things that I can do. I like to pray before I compete. That's a major component. I pray for my opponents. I pray for good competition and stuff like that, and just kind of talk to God. And I do some meditation now, which I actually picked up from. It's funny because I got a master's in sports psychology, but I never actually thought about like mid competition meditation, and so I started doing that. And they call it autogenic training, where I basically feel these sensations of words. So like warmth is what I put on my shoulders and stuff like that. And so I feel like this big hug from God, right? Because again, I throw because my Father in heaven gives me the opportunity to throw. And so that's how I think of it. Every opportunity is an opportunity to praise God, and so that's how I go into competition.
Of course, this past year when you were in the Olympics, what was that feeling like whenever you put on that jersey and you had the Olympic rings on your jersey and you got into the Olympics and you were like, okay, I'm here at the Olympics?
Oh man, that's pretty cool. Definitely, it's weird. It's like one of those. It almost feels like you're out of body, but but I was like in control. So it was really neat to experience that feeling that so many of us have worked for so long. Again, like I was in 2016 and I had to wait 5 years to have my second go at it, and so just to have that opportunity to put on the US again, it's the same feeling every time. It's you get to represent something bigger than yourself. I get to represent my Father in heaven. I get to represent my community. I get to represent my family. I get to represent anybody who looks like me around the world, not just in the U.S. But it's cool being able to be without holding a real flag, but a flag bearer for so many people and so many communities. And it's incredible just that experience, and really ultimately just that spirit is something that I would never get just in a regular track meet, and so that, I mean, ultimately that was just kind of the feeling. So it's definitely inspiring, and it makes you feel like you can take on anything when you put the jersey on.
Of course, now that the Olympics is over with, how does it feel to have the Olympics behind your last name?
Oh man, I mean, it's kind of weird. Like I know I'm an Olympian now, but um, I guess it doesn't really feel any different. I guess if that makes sense, like it does, but it doesn't. I think it's a huge confidence boost in the sense that you did something that only a very marginal percentage of the total human population has ever done and will ever do. Um, but at the same time, again, I think it's just I guess the humbleness about me is, I'm still Alex Young, and you'll see me at the grocery store. I'm still Alex Young that you're gonna see it over at campus or whatever, so, or you're gonna see at work. So nothing really changed in that regard, and that's just kind of how I see it. So it's this weird, like I did this, but at the same time, like I'm still a regular person, and I'm still trying to get better at the very thing I do. And so, like, when people go, "Oh, you're an Olympian," and I'm like, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, I'm still the friendly guy that or that you're going to know. So, it's just, it's a very, very weird kind of situation.
What were some of your favorite memories and moments during this Olympics before last Olympics?
Mm, so repeat that again, please.
What were some of your favorite memories and moments from this previous Olympics?
Okay. I think probably I think one of the best moments was actually competing. And I know I didn't do exactly what I wanted, but being able, like I said, being able to represent so many people was something that was really cool. And I think being in that situation where it's a very high stress situation, it wasn't a very high stress situation for me per se. It was, I felt very much in control the entire time. And when I say control, it was confident. I was very confident the whole time. And that was something that I was really, really happy about. And just competing in that big stadium with all the lights on. It's the second time I've been in a really big stadium like that. Last time was in London, and London, only difference between Tokyo and London had it had thousands. It had like 15,000 plus spectators in the stands, and so that one was really cool. But you always get this really cool feeling when you're still in a giant stadium, regardless. So that was cool. Tokyo was really nice. Unfortunately, I couldn't see all of it, but the people were extremely nice. That were helpful in the Olympic Village. That was ultimately some of the coolest interactions, I think, some of the best moments. Slowly, like there was one day I was doing my laundry, and a lady was telling me about where she was from and what she was doing in Japan, and ultimately asked for like pictures with me and my other teammate when we were doing laundry. So and then she ended up getting the whole staff out, and I was like, this is crazy. It's like, so it was really fun in that regard, just to actually interact with some of the locals, and how helpful they were, and they were so nice and sincere and enthusiastic about everything. So that was one of the great experiences. And so again, and the other experiences were just seeing some of your friends who you hadn't seen in years, and just having an opportunity to see everyone again, and not only just seeing everyone, but catching up and uh, watching some of your friends that you've seen for years on end now, on the daily grind every day, and watching some of them come home with medals, especially like Raven Saunders. It was really cool watching her go and win her medal, just because I know pretty much firsthand, what she's been going through the past couple of years. So to see her, on top of that medal stand, and she held up the X in protest, and there's an intersection where all the press people meet, and seeing her with this medal, and then seeing all the news headlines afterwards, and how supportive she was, and how supportive of every community that she represented, was. It meant a lot. And so it was really cool just seeing your friends doing really good things.
Who were some people that you looked up to and was like, oh my God, they're in the Olympics, I'm competing with them?
There was nobody really. I mean, at this point, because I was thinking about myself as a competitor, right? So it's like that didn't really, I guess, that thought never really came into my head. I never really think of celebrities. I just think of celebrities as regular people anyway. So I never get like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Who is that? That's such and such. I never do that. I will say that it was really cool. And this is because I'm just a hammer nerd. I mean, I throw a hammer. And so there's a guy named Ivan Tikon, and he was competing in the same competition, actually in the same qualifying group as I was. So it was pretty cool to see this guy that I've literally watched thousands upon thousands of throws on YouTube. And, he's a prominent hammer thrower in the early 2000s. And so watching him, he's world champ. I'm pretty sure he's an Olympic champ, but he's definitely a world champion. So it was pretty cool watching him on YouTube. And then, he's right here, within 6 feet of me in the same competition. And it was just really neat to kind of see how that's a full circle, right? But yeah, like I wasn't really skittish because he was still a competitor, but it was definitely cool to be like, man, yeah, I just competed against the guy that I used to watch on YouTube on a regular basis.
That's so amazing. What advice would you give college athletes that are looking to be hammer throwers?
um, I would say, it's a very foreign event. Like most of us don't really start until we're in college. I would say make sure you pay attention to the detail. Um, Definitely don't be afraid to ask your coach questions, and make sure you let them know you're not asking out of spite, but more or less out of respect to understand what you're doing. Only that you can totally appreciate what's going on in the throw. Again, the hammer throw's very technical. It's very complicated, and so with that being said, you want to know why something is happening, and it's just out of curiosity and out of a pure respect for your coach. And so I think that's something that should always be said. Make sure you work on the throw outside of practice time. And what I mean by that is work on the turns, visualize outside. Think about the things that you can do or what your coach says that is going to help your throw. Close your eyes and visualize yourself doing that. And that's going to take some practice, as everything takes practice. But I think the big thing is, since in the US we start to hammer so late, the big thing you can do is catch up, is to take those mental reps. It's proven that when you do visualization or imagery, is a technical term in sports psychology, your body actually still completes that movement physically, as there's small neural activity that takes off as you're doing the task in your head. So it's just like it's not quite the actual full movement, but your body's still actively learning while you're doing that. So keep that in mind. Really, be patient. Patience is key. That's key in the throw itself, and it's also key just in general. Be patient with yourself and give yourself a chance. don't sit there and you know, complain about something not working or be upset. It takes time, and I think that's part of the patience too. So give yourself a chance. If it starts feeling like it's not going right, or you're learning something new, the distance will drop, but it's eventually going to go back up. And that's what happens with skill acquisition. It's hard at first because your body's doing something new that you don't know before, and so eventually your body will know how to do it, and it'll get really efficient at it, and it's ultimately going to make the throw better. So I would say just keep those things in mind and have fun. I think that's the last one, and arguably the most important one is just to have fun. I think sometimes we forget, in the collegiate system and even in the professional life too, right? When ultimately this is kind of your livelihood, other than being a student in college. Most of the time, if you're on scholarship at a university, that is your livelihood, because the university wants you there because you're a really good athlete, right? So don't stress yourself out about that. When you have fun, you end up performing a lot better, solely because there's a lot less stress on you. So definitely bet on yourself, learn, be patient, and have fun.
What advice would you give upcoming future people looking to compete in the Olympics for the first time, or that are looking to go back to the Olympics?
Really, I would say, for either instance, take it one day at a time. That's the biggest one, is take it in stride. You're going to get overwhelmed at some point. But again, excuse me. So you're going to get overwhelmed at some point, and if you take it one step at a time and alleviate some of the stressful situations that way, right? And don't let it carry. There's going to be times where it's going to be really joyous, and you enjoy those times. There's other times where you're going to kind of feel isolated. There's going to be times where you feel like, man, even your friends are a little more standoffish. It's probably going to happen. And again, it's the same thing. Just you take it one step at a time. Enjoy it for what it is, and enjoy it for what it isn't, and then you just move on. And so that's honestly the biggest piece of advice for any first timers, and I know multi-timers probably know that too. They probably know that better than I do. But yeah, just take it in stride, take it one day at a time, one instance, one moment at a time. Embrace everything.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
So they can follow me on Twitter at AO_Young1. And then they can also find me on Instagram with the same handle at AO_Young and then the number 1. So those are the two social medias I'm really on. And so you can find me on both of those. And like I said, again, that's at AO_Young1. And so that's at AYO_ my last name Young and then the number 1.
Thank you again, Alex Young, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the U.S. hammer throwing.
All right. Thank you, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.